Barbie!
I told you to wait in the dream house.
Boys, avenge me! Avenge me! Avengers!
Bazinga!
Scruffy-looking nerf herders.
Ethan Hunt contacted you?
I am good, Rooster. I'm very good.
So you are Yoi's a trainer who trains.
Gonzo the Great will ride this baby again.
Hello and welcome to episode 59, the pre-Oscars episode of the Real Serious Podcast. As always, joined by Jack, but this week we have a very special guest, Mr. Danny Schechter. How are we, Danny? Welcome to the pod.
Doing all right. Very excited to have a spotlight here. I know
Yes.
Chucky's not with us, so I'm going to do my best to replace him.
Hey, that's all right. Charles had some Wi-Fi issues, which for those who listen to the pod is the least shocking news of all time. But Danny, big guy on Letterboxd. He has a perfect even following and followers ratio. So let's just say this guy, he's well known on the Letterboxd world. But yeah, thank you for coming. And Jack, how's your week been going?
Good. Just
Nice.
riding high off after the IU Purdue game.
Oh,
Really
yeah,
upset that was on a Sunday though. It felt wrong. You know, it's like I saw people walking into the game with like beer cans, and I'm like, dude, it's a Sunday morning. I'm like, that's not the speed I was taking it at. But some people just
but it was good.
first.
Great to have a win. I don't know. I've watched very little college basketball this year. I feel like I've forgotten that it exists. I don't know. I just feel like one like separated from going. It's just I feel like it's a sport that I've kind of forgotten about.
Have you
I gotta
watched
get
it all,
back into
Kenny?
it.
Yeah, I caught the end of the game. I was watching the Knicks game before, and then they got smacked by the Celtics per usual. So I tapped back into the IU game. I saw we were down like 16 and a half. So I was like, oh, it's over. I turned the TV on, and all of a sudden we're up 15. And I saw we were on like a 33-8 run in the second half. So, I mean, the team sucks this year, so I haven't really been watching, but it was cool to watch that, at least beat Purdue at home, you know?
For sure.
It's in like a weird limbo state because obviously like Woodson's gone, and then like they could make the tournament, like, but also it's almost like you don't want them to. But if they
Shocked they made the tournament.
yeah,
Nah, let's make it. Let's make it.
yeah, Jack wants to see it because he'll be there. But yeah, so we got a lot to cover today with Danny on the pod. We're doing his favorite movie, according to his Letterboxd at least, Memories of Murder, which we'll talk about in a little bit, especially because we're shifting into Bong Joon-ho mode coming up this next couple of weeks. And then we'll talk maybe a little Oscars preview for next week and James Bond. This is a lot for James Bond. But before we do any of that, let's get into what we've been watching this last week. Jack, you can show him how it's done here, and then we're gonna wait because I'm gonna dip into Danny's previous week with Captain America.
Okay,
But we'll get there.
My week was pretty good. I've had worse weeks, but I was pretty happy with what I watched this week. I kind of dove a little bit into Bong Joon-ho's filmography, which was pretty fun. But I started off with the Fantastic Four. Just like I've been dying to watch that movie since the new trailer came out. Still holds up, super nostalgic, great movie. Then I watched Snowpiercer, which we were like up in the air about also doing a review on that one. But I love that so much more, like so much so that I literally ordered the Steelbook.
Yeah, there you go.
Like the next day, like after I finished it, I was like, I got the Steelbook, and that's like it without the slipcover. Super sweet. I
That
was
movie
just
makes me
surprised,
like bummed out because just like Chris Evans could do so much better than he's doing.
it's his best role. It's his
It
best.
is.
It's awesome. It's so good. But I like watched it, and I was like, I would watch that again today. You know, it's just like some of those movies are so good that like you just want to watch them like again and again and again. But after I finished Parasite, I hopped immediately into The Host, which is very good. Bong Joon-ho. I hope that we can dive into that maybe like another day. I don't know if you've seen that, Hunter. I saw Danny has seen it.
I've not. We could touch on it if you want.
Yeah, it's funny because it's like this all eyes on this monster that kind of arises in Korea, and it's funny because the monster looks like terrible. Like it's the worst CGI monster you will ever see in your entire life. It's like I think it's like a 2001 movie or something, like 2006. I guess this was his follow-up to Memories of Murder, but it's just so funny because the monster looks terrible, but like the movie is so good because like really focuses in on the monster, but it's not about the monster entirely, and that's what kind of makes it interesting. And after watching a ton of Bong Joon-ho's movies, it's been fun to just see that like he takes kind of these like plot lines that have been very generic, but he kind of makes it his own and twists it, which is really fun. Then I watched The Monkey, which I thought we were going to do a review on this week.
Yeah, I heard that was awful.
Not that it's like the worst movie in the world, but it's like, especially the follow-up to Long Legs. I don't know. Did you see Long Legs, Danny?
Yeah, I like Long Legs like enough. I thought it was getting a little bit overhyped in the media.
Sure.
But it was definitely a solid movie. I'm kind of disappointed when I saw your review. Joey and I were gonna go see it, probably later this week, and now we're like, I don't know.
Well, if I saw it with like friends, I feel like it'd be different because I'd be like, it's just like a dark comedy more than it's like a horror movie, which I feel like it was just mismarketed in my opinion, because I feel like they tried to make it this big horror movie and it just wasn't at all. I just sat there and there was just times to this where it was funny and I just genuinely laughed, but I don't really think I felt scared. Or the kills, they're very silly. They're not like, I think people were comparing it to Final Destination, which I've never seen any of those movies, but if that's what those movies are like, where it's just silly kill after kill and it just feels very stale, probably not going to be for me. But yeah, and then I watched The Room, which was, have any of you guys seen The Room?
You're tearing me apart, isn't that?
Yeah.
You said no.
Apparently it's like the best. It's okay. It's like the worst movie of all time. It's terrible. Like, so it was so bad. They made a movie based on like,
I have seen
it
that.
was made. You've seen The Disaster Artist?
I've seen The Disaster Artist, which is good.
Okay, so that's with James Franco, and he got nominated, I want to say, for that role of playing the guy who produced and made this movie. But I went to the screening. My friend had just watched The Disaster Artist, and he's like, let's go see it. I was like, all right, cool. And I show up, and I didn't realize this, but at the counter, they're like, hey, do you want to pay like $3 for, and she kind of like mumbled it, but I thought she said like a sweets bag. And I'm like, oh, okay, like that's like sure, like I'll take some candy or something for $3, And I get it, and I look inside, and it's spoons, like just spoons. I misheard her, and she said spoon, like a bag of spoons. Okay, but in this movie and in this screening that I'm at, it's an interactive screening. So like the audience is supposed to like engage. So like when there'd be like intimate scenes, like everyone was clapping. Like I don't know. It was so funny. And then the spoons. So in this movie, in the set, they have pictures kind of like frame, like around the house, and they got them from Home Goods. And like the picture that was in there was a spoon. So whenever you'd be watching the movie and a spoon would come on, like on screen, like it would say like spoon, and like big letters at the bottom, and everyone would grab a plastic spoon and like throw it at the movie. And it was like, I can't explain it. Like I beg you to go see this if there's any chance that there's a screening like this, like close to you. I was not expecting to enjoy this. And the movie's really bad. Like it's god awful, but it seems to be like there's a massive following for it. But by the end of the movie, there's just an insane amount of plastic spoons just like sitting in front of the projector. It's pretty funny. That's what I watched. I probably rambled on a little bit more than I should have.
That's like what Rocky Horror Picture Show people go like to midnight screenings. They participate. Yeah, definitely don't watch Rocky Horror Picture Show unless you've watching it with a crowd. Because I didn't get it if I wasn't with people.
Yeah.
You don't get it.
I don't. I got it. Yeah, people were pressed. I got like a couple letterbox comments of like, you just don't get it. But yeah,
Hunter, I watched that by myself too, and I was like, I thought about turning it off about 5 times.
I was reading the reviews on Letterboxd, and I was like, what am I missing? And then I realized it's the crowd, like the crowd aspect of it. It's like rewatching Endgame, not the same.
I would agree. For people like me.
Danny, would you like to go next?
Yeah. So,
right.
As far as stuff, I watched the last week or two. Obviously, I haven't been on here, so I might go a little bit farther back because I had a lot of work this week, so I didn't get a ton of movies in. But last couple things I watched Blue Velvet, David Lynch. I know he just passed away, and I hadn't seen it, been on my watch list a while, and so I was intrigued. I haven't really seen a ton of David Lynch stuff. Watched it. Interesting. From a directorial point of view, like it was shot beautifully. I thought the colors were extremely vivid. I was impressed with the camera angles he took. I thought that it was a very well shot movie. The plot was a little ridiculous. Some of the performances were a little bit over the top. I know there's a lot of people who are in a contingency of believing that that's intentional and that David Lynch kind of shoots his movies in a way that's very dreamlike, and it almost seems like unreal, and it's kind of on purpose. And totally cool with that. I gave it like 3.5 stars. Like, it was solid, but definitely not like. Again, I don't know if that's like the kind of movie that really moves me. I know some people like. I think it's got like 4.5, 4.2 stars on average on Letterboxd. People really like it. But that was like I think my first maybe David Lynch movie. So I'm gonna start diving into his filmography a little bit more, just because recently passed away, and he's a good director I've wanted to get into for a while. So I know we'll touch on this later. I have Captain America. Do you want me to wait on that? Hunter?
No, you got to I want you to load it. I need to understand explain your review for those who are not looking at it, obviously, because I'm staring at it and I've read it like 3 times.
So the first like scene of the movie, like the first sequence of the movie, I sat there and I watched it, and I'm like, okay, this movie is going to be god awful. It's going to suck. And I anticipated it. Marvel's kind of fallen off, but I was optimistic that this one might be like tolerable. The whole first scene was terrible. It was just cheesy. It was like it was the exact things that you think of like Marvel when you talk about how bad they've gotten compared to what they were. Like all of the cheesy lines, the stupid fighting scenes that don't really like have any stakes to them. Like that whole scene happened at the beginning. I'm like, okay, this movie's gonna be really bad. I'm just gonna like live tweet it, but instead of live tweeting it, I was just making edits to my Letterboxd review as like the movie went on. And as it's going on, I'm just like every ridiculous thing that popped in my head, I was just adding into my edits. And I will say, I do think Giancarlo Esposito is really cool. That's one of my edits. And I very much enjoyed him in the movie. Every other performance in there was bad. The Red Hulk CGI was awful. There was one fight where I actually had to close my eyes because the way that the lights were flashing, and this is a warning for anyone who has epilepsy: do not go see this movie because it will send you into a seizure. It hurt my head to sit and watch this movie. I'm like, did anyone actually like watch the movie after they did all the final edits? Because it was ridiculous. The movie was so bad. And I almost would recommend seeing it just so you could be like, okay, this is gonna make me never want to see a Marvel movie again. If that's like how you want to cap off your Marvel experience. But oh my god, it was atrocious.
My favorite edit is edit 7. Remember Captain America Civil War? That shit was so fire. Yeah, it is amazing how far it's fallen.
Yeah, I mean, it's really disappointing, and like I think part of it is I saw Captain America Civil War when I was in like high school, like early high school or middle school, so I had a different perspective of like what kind of movies were good, what I enjoyed. I think obviously the movie quality has gotten worse because I can still sit and watch Captain America Civil War or like the early of like Avengers movies, like anything pre-phase 3, I'll sit and watch it, and if I thought it was a good movie then, I still think it's a good movie now. So it's not like, oh, my tastes have changed so much I just don't like Marvel movies anymore. But I think the stakes have gotten too high. Like at this point, we've just seen like Thanos threaten, all of the entire humanity. So now any fight that's like less than that means nothing to me. The power scaling makes no sense to me at all. They like randomly decide when superheroes are super strong and when they're not. And maybe this is just like me, so I'm sure both of you guys have seen The Boys on Amazon.
Yeah.
So like you watch that, and then you watch like the fighting scenes in a Marvel movie, and you're like, okay, this just it doesn't move me at all. Like there's nothing. I'm not that like I need it to be gory, but like it's just so unrealistic. You got people just getting knocked out from nothing. Like no one ever dies. There's no blood or anything like that. So it's just like I don't know. The fighting scenes have no stakes for me, so it just kind of ruins the whole experience.
Yeah, there used to be like weight to these characters, and they've just become like weightless.
Yeah,
But I'm hoping Daredevil is different. Like it just there's moments, there's flashes of like good, and I'll talk about that in a second too when I talk about what I watched this last week. But it's just a shame that, especially like Sam Wilson as a character, deserved way better than this, and it just sucks. Especially because the show was good. The show was good.
Yeah.
Yeah, they had 3 good TV shows in a row. WandaVision was good.
Yes.
Falcon and the Winter Soldier was good. Loki was amazing. But the problem is then they just rush out all this content. And I didn't even watch Moon Knight, but I heard Moon Knight was pretty solid too.
Yeah,
and
it was decent.
Yeah.
I think that there's levels to this. You got to build up who the character is and slowly increase the stakes. You can't throw out every movie can't be to save the world, if that makes sense. You got to have the characters slowly become that's what was so cool about the Avengers is the first couple of fights, the first couple of movies, they're just fighting Hydra. They're fighting a terrorist organization, normal humans. So the stakes are they're lower, but it's more realistic to watch. And it's cool when it all culminates with them versus Thanos. But now the entities that they're fighting are just so unbelievably ridiculously powered that I just can't I can't really. It doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, I just want to see one of them fight a guy, or just fight a group of people. I don't.
Yeah.
They all don't need to be the world enders.
Even for Spider-Man, which the new animated series that came out that Hunter and I are going to talk about a little bit later, but they have fights with people that pretty unknown. They're not super hyper focused on, hey, we're going to bring in Captain America, or we're going to bring in the Hulk to be in this episode. They literally just focus on Spider-Man being a good character, and they bring in all of his villains, not all of his villains, but they bring in his villains when it's necessary. They don't just throw a bunch of stuff at you and say, all right, understand it. And the fights are interesting. The character development's interesting. We'll get to that later, but it sucks. And I'm hoping that they don't flop, Fantastic Four and other big projects upcoming. But
if Fantastic Four and Thunderbolts are bad, I will be very, very nervous because we're 2 movies away from the Avengers movie.
What makes you nervous? You're not nervous already.
Well, okay, the reason I expected this with Captain America. There was all the news and all the stuff, the reshoots and everything, and I think Daredevil's gonna be good. And kind of coming off of X-Men '97, I was all right, this was the lull, but there's just something if you mess up Fantastic Four after it's 5 years of them hyping it up. It's what are we doing here? And then afterwards, you have the Avengers, which they're trying to save with Robert Downey Jr. It's Doom. It's all right, you're already pushing my ability to believe in what's happening. If it's below a 7, it's just let's just pack it up. Let's pack it up. We'll think fondly about the old days, and we're just give me a few more Spider-Man, and I'm done. That's kind of where it's at.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. Joey, who you guys know, but for the people who are listening, he's my roommate. We recently did a rewatch of all of the X-Men movies, which they have a cult following, but generally people don't really consider them to be great movies. But compared to what Marvel's putting out now, it's night and day. They're so much better. I watched Logan, and I was they made this in 2017, I think it was.
Yeah,
and that's the best superhero movie that maybe I've seen. I don't really consider the Dark Knight movie superhero movies, so ignoring the Dark Knight trilogy. Logan's probably the best superhero movie I've seen there. That's not it relies on knowledge of all these other movies. Obviously knowing Wolverine and having seen the X-Men movies before it helps a lot. But that movie was so good. It was rated R, which I know there's a whole monetary reason that they can't do that for a lot of these superhero movies, but it made the movie so much better. It gives them so much more freedom with what they're doing in the movie. I don't know. I feel that's kind of got to be the next generation of these types of movies, because I don't think they can keep putting out PG-13 stuff that is really, really considered solid if they're just going to keep relying on CGI and kind of throwing together superheroes in order to create storylines. And you need to rely on having seen the last 35 movies and the last 4 TV shows they put out in order to understand everything that's occurring. So that's kind of my feeling on Marvel. But just to sum up the rest of the stuff I watched this week real quick, I finally finished watching Fantastic Planet, which is weird. Like I don't know if it's like drawn or animated or what's from 1973. It's in French. Super interesting movie. It took me like a year to watch it though, because I just like had to keep turning it off because I was like, this is ridiculous. And I was tired of reading French. Very weird movie, but if you're just like, I want to watch something that's like gonna make you think, that's also like kind of disturbing. It's on Max, so pretty cool. I watched Companion in theaters. Love my boy Jack Quaid, my favorite Nepo baby. He's awesome. Very much like a kind of Black Mirror episode, but like in movie form. Sophie Thatcher was also amazing. And there were, I mean, a couple people in here were from TV shows too. I don't know if you guys have ever seen, obviously Jack Quaid, The Boys. I don't know if either of you guys have ever seen, what's it called? The vampire TV show, something Shadows.
Oh, What We Do in the Shadows.
Yes, What We Do in the Shadows.
The funny heavier set guy.
Yes, Harvey Ian. He was awesome in the movie too. He was really funny. So really enjoyed that. If you haven't seen it, highly recommend. And I also finished reading the book Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, so I rewatched the movie. The book is unbelievable. Not for everyone, but definitely super fun to read. And the movie, I really liked it. I can see why a lot of people wouldn't, but if you are interested at all in just like very like kind of psychedelic-y, trippy stories, I'd give it a watch. But yeah, that's the stuff I watched this past week. Sorry for going on the Marvel tangent, but
hey, that's half of this podcast is going on Marvel tangents. So all good. So for me this week, not as many feature films, but I did go to something really cool. So last week, kind of a peek behind the scenes of the pod, I had the boys record early last week because I was going to something, and then I kind of kept it to myself, but then set up a picture afterwards. So every single year around the nation, they do special screenings of all of the short films that are in the Oscars, in the animation and live action category. So I went to that, and so I saw all 10 nominees in both the live action category and the animated category, and I really enjoyed it. Some of them are very like artsy and kind of genre pushing, which I more appreciated than liked. I think overall I liked the animated ones a little better. There's one actually, I'm Not a Robot, which is one of the live action ones that is quite literally Companion, but in a short. It's like, it was shocking to see it. It's the exact plot of Companion, but overall like a really cool experience that I highly recommend doing if you can, at least watching a couple of these, just because it's kind of cool to see what's around the world and what people are doing. So big recommend for me. And now at least I feel slightly knowledgeable when watching the Oscars. I'm like, oh, I saw that. And then because of what we've been talking about the last month and a half, and since I was a hater of it, I decided to watch the first two How to Train Your Dragons back to back. I like these, I think. I don't love them. The music makes them infinitely better. But the one thing I do actually appreciate is that it's one of the few animated like series that ages their characters. Like they actually grow up and like evolve and age, and like it's actually nice to see. The animation in the first one is nothing compared to the second one, and I still haven't seen the certain third one, which apparently is also even like just as good. So big recommend there for me, but I'm not excited for this live action remake, which is just going to be so annoying to go see. And then on the theme of Marvel, I had to see if I was like going through it with my rose colored glasses. And so I rewatched Shang-Chi, and I was like, this was my favorite one of this last little bit. Like there has to be something here. And it was good. It's still good. I give it 4 stars. This is kind of, I'll say it probably deserves about 3.5, but I just really like this character. Also insane that this came out in 2021 and we have not seen him since. Just the stupidest thing I've ever seen in my life, but still good. And then Memories of Murder, which we'll talk about in a little bit. I also watched Memories of Murder in the perfect way that we're supposed to watch it, on my phone on a plane. So that's the way Bong Joon-ho decided it should be watched. So that's what I did. And I forgot to log it, but I watched the Lego Movie again. God, so good. So damn good. But yeah, that's it. That's all I got. So we can get into
solid week.
Yeah, no, real solid week. Going Memories of Murder to the Lego Movie, just total whiplash. But honestly, a great double feature. Really gets you in a good mood after Memories of Murder. All right, news. Starting off with some rapid fire stuff, and we'll see which one we want to touch on, if any. All right, number 1, Dune Part 3, filming late summer.
Jason Momoa is back. He's back.
All-time movie name, Duncan, Idaho.
Either of you guys read the books?
So Charles has read. What is this? This
is Dune Messiah.
Dune Messiah. Yeah, which this is apparently the hardest one to adapt.
Yes, definitely.
So have you read this?
Yeah. So I read the first 2 books, which would be like the first 3 movies. But
okay.
Yeah, I can see why this would be the hardest one to adapt just from like reading the book.
Okay, because from my understanding, Duncan Idaho comes back.
Yes, I don't want to spoil anything, but yes, like I figured he was going to come back in this movie because of what happens in the book.
Okay. All I know is that eventually Paul, there's like the children of Dune, which then they go find Paul. I know that happens eventually, but it's not in this movie.
Yeah, basically Dune Messiah is kind of like an end to this specific storyline that is Dune 1, Dune 2, and then Dune Messiah. So like the end of this movie will be the end of like this like circular storyline, and then Children of Dune is like a separate storyline that begins with like kind of new main characters, but like it's still the same characters.
Okay. Yeah, because that's his son writes it, right? Because it's Frank Herbert, and then his son jumps in and starts writing after that. Okay.
Yeah, which a lot of people say it's a lot worse once his son starts writing. I haven't read Children of Dune.
Apparently, they're thinking of doing Children of Dune with the guy who's doing the new Jurassic World movie. So,
all of those are really good. So
yeah, those are always spot on. But yeah, sorry to all the Batman fans out there, as Dune is going to have a trilogy before we probably get a sequel. So that stinks. Next up, we got some delays, unfortunately. So Spider-Man 4 delayed by a whole week, now coming out end of July 2026. So sorry, got to change those calendars. They're giving another week to the Odyssey, which is probably a good call. Steven Spielberg's new movie, the UFO one, is delayed from May to June 2026. And the Daniels next movie is delayed from June 2026 to an unknown date. So some delays there, unfortunately, which also the Daniels one I'm very excited about, because that's like their follow-up to Everything Everywhere All at Once, which hopefully gets weird. Gets weird and freaky. But kind of going back to Spider-Man, we got our first look at Matt Damon as Odysseus for the Odyssey. I'm so in. I cannot wait for this. I'm so pumped.
I think the more like I'm seeing the pictures of the set and we see the Trojan horse, I'm getting more excited for this. Initially, when I saw this photo, I wasn't super excited about it. Not that it felt stale or anything, but it just felt very. It makes sense for Nolan. Nolan's not like I wasn't expecting maybe the most dramatic costume choice. It makes sense. It's fitting for the time, but I was just kind of like, oh, that's definitely a first look. So yeah. I wasn't as blown away as some people were. Some people in the comments were like, oh my gosh, this is going to be peak. This is like, I love Nolan, but I'm not going to, I have like both Nolan. I have a Nolan rug in my room. I'm about to put up another Nolan poster, but it's like, I'm not going to just like glaze him here just for the sake of him being Christopher Nolan. So I thought it was neat. It looked good. What do you think, Danny?
I saw people arguing on Twitter because historically it wasn't accurate. Technically,
really?
It's supposed to have like ram's horns or something, like horns.
The history heads out there were pissed.
And they were like, well, he wouldn't have worn the red feather thing on his helmet. That's not right. And I was like, dude, this is probably like it's going to be one of the largest movie budgets maybe of all time. Like, who cares? Like, I would consider myself kind of a nerd, but I'm not that big of a nerd. So I'm very excited. And Nolan is, outside of one of his movies, every single movie of his I like. So not a Tenet guy, but I hate Tenet. Like awful. I understand why people like it. I can't stand it. So I'm very excited. I think it's gonna be awesome.
I think there's people in the comments that are like this, the same people that are like complaining about the historical accuracy for the costume. I'm sure are the same people that complained about the newspaper being in Gladiator 2.
Yeah,
when there was a lot more to complain about. If you want to complain about something for Gladiator 2,
there was enough there to complain about. My favorite thing about the Odyssey, though, is if you go to IMDb, it says there's 2 credited writers for this movie. It's Homer and Christopher Nolan, and that's just a fun little thing to look at. This cast is insane, though. Like you're gonna have people like Mia Goth on screen for like 2 minutes, and it's just a who's who of everything. I love it.
I feel like it'd be cool just to have like a small little cameo, you know, kind of like how Matt Damon in Interstellar.
Mm-hmm.
Not necessarily someone is like, well, he is a massive character in the story, but I'd love for a character to maybe not be credited or like known heading into the movie, and then we're just sitting there and it's kind of just a fun cameo, you know, like not Tom Hanks, but you know what I'm saying, like
like Kevin Spacey in Seven.
Well, the reason I was thinking, so I thought back to when Oppenheimer first came out, and then a year prior was Nope, with Jordan Peele's Nope, and with Jordan Peele's Nope was the first teaser for Oppenheimer, like a year prior. So my thought is it's a possibility we get a teaser for the Odyssey with Jurassic World this year, because that'd be a year out. And if that happens, oh boy, that'd be great. So it's possible. Hey, breaking news here first, made up by me on the spot, but it's possible.
I'd like more first looks. I'm just like I like the photo, but I feel like that photo is just gonna be used for the next 6 months until
I want to see the Cyclops. I want the Cyclops first look, because apparently they're building an animatronic like puppet, which will either be just the coolest or the worst thing ever.
Yeah.
So
it's gotta be cool. There's no way it's not cool.
Yeah, no, it's gonna be sweet. This movie does have a lot of pressure on it, though. I feel like a lot.
Oh, for sure.
Which, if anyone can handle it, Christopher Nolan probably can. So, enough glazing of Christopher Nolan, though. Danny, I know you're about to be sad about this next piece of news. I read this and I thought immediately about. I'm so glad you're on the podcast because we could talk about it. Sergeant Rock. DC's Sergeant Rock is just they lost Daniel Craig, so it's not Daniel Craig anymore. Still Luca Guadagnino, but not Daniel Craig anymore. As a big Sergeant Rock guy, how are we feeling?
You know, as probably the biggest Sergeant Rock head, at least on the face of the United States, I can't speak to the world. You know, there's a couple Sergeant Rock heads probably across the globe who know more than I do. I was completely unaware of what this movie was until Jack told me like 10 minutes before this podcast that we were going to talk about it. So and he also said, don't worry about looking any of this stuff up. So I'm going to go with, we'll see what the reviews say, you know, and that'll determine whether or not I watch it. He sounds like a cool guy, though. I like, well, when's the last time a superhero movie has been positively supporting the U.S. military complex? I feel like we don't get enough of those. So I'm looking forward for another movie that tells us how cool the American military is and how we should be expanding our interest globally. I can't imagine that's going to be
the mindset of that mixing with Luca Guadagnino is just an incredible mashing of worlds. The U.S. military brought to you by the director of Challengers. It's going to be just an incredible meeting of the worlds.
If you read between the lines of Challengers, you would know that was also very pro-U.S. military.
You didn't notice all the arms deals going on in the background?
Exactly.
Yeah. But yeah, apparently they're finding a new Sergeant Rock.
Apparently, Jeremy Allen White's being eyed to take the role over.
There you go. Daniel Craig. We just felt too old for me. I don't know. But hey, DC figuring it out, I guess, one step at a time. Until Superman comes out, I cannot make a judgment about any of these things. I have to see Superman before I can start getting excited.
I saw the trailer. It looked like pretty solid, but obviously I've seen trailers that I thought were going to be awesome. It ended up being terrible, so we'll never know.
Black Hawk Down.
We'll know when it comes
Good example. All right, this next piece gets me very excited for two things. So, The Rock is starring in Martin Scorsese's Town Says Aloha, or whatever. I think it's something Aloha something. It's described as Goodfellas meets The Departed, starring The Rock with Emily Blunt and Leonardo DiCaprio. So The Rock is just going to win an Oscar. This is going to be the greatest ever.
He's locked in.
He's locked in.
He's leaning forward a little bit. He said, you know what, it's time to get a little serious.
He finally was Black Adam, and now he's like, I'm good. I got that in my system. I'm ready to roll.
Can you guys name the one movie on Letterboxd that has a higher than 3.5 star rating that The Rock is in? There's only one. All of his, like, I don't know, 40 or 50 movies, there's one that has higher than 3.5 stars.
Oh, man.
Is it the first Moana?
Yes. That's the
yeah.
3.7.
Yeah.
I saw that and I was looking like, has he ever actually been in a good movie? Like, there's some of the Fast and Furious movies
This guy has not seen Hobbs and Shaw.
I know. I have seen Hobbs and Shaw. That's the thing. Which I don't know if you guys know this. You probably do because you're big movie heads. But in his contract, in both of their contracts, Jason Statham and Dwayne Johnson have a clause that says they cannot lose a fight. So when they fought, there was no like official winner because they both signed contracts saying they can't lose. It's one of the most ridiculous things I've ever heard. And like again, I like some of the Fast and Furious movies, but I'm thinking like I like Pain and Gain. I don't know if either of you guys have seen that, the Michael Bay movie.
Good Michael Bay.
That's kind of more controversial. I know a lot of people don't like it. And outside of that, I'm like, I've never seen him in a movie that I was like, this is good. Like San Andreas is kind of like whatever. It's fun, but like it's not a good movie. And I just saw Red One and that was terrible.
What are you talking about?
Yeah, what?
It was gonna be as big as Oppenheimer.
Dude, Callum Drift was perfect in everything he did.
Jack O'Malley? Come on. I cosplayed and everything in the theater.
It's like an unmovable force meets or immovable object meets an unstoppable force, which is Scorsese making movies that are really good versus Dwayne Johnson making movies that are not very good. So I don't know what's gonna happen. I don't know who's gonna come out on top here.
Yeah, when Dwayne Johnson was normal sized, he made some good ones. The Gridiron Gang is pretty decent.
The Game Plan.
The Game Plan is a classic. He's actually great in the other guys.
The Other Guys is a good movie, but
I'm shocked that was my other guess I was gonna have for what was higher on Letterboxd.
That was like a 3.3
for the bushes.
or 3.5.
For the bushes.
Hilarious movie, but I don't know if you'd consider that like critically speaking to be like a highbrow piece of cinema. I think that's kind of hopefully what Scorsese is going for here. And if it is Goodfellas meets Departed, I will be
right. That's such an awesome like combination of. But this does make me excited for two things. Number one, it tells me that Scorsese is a big WWE fan, and the other thing is that The Smashing Machine, which comes out this year, also starring Emily Blunt and The Rock, directed by Benny Safdie, is probably really good. Because I feel like this is something Scorsese kind of hears in the background and like gets some information on, and then is like, all right, let's do it with The Rock. Because this is supposed to be The Rock's like Oscar moment, is The Smashing Machine. I hope it's good. I'm very worried. I hope it's good.
I just don't see Scorsese like saying like, you know what, I need a Hawaiian mob boss, and him just saying, oh, The Rock. Yeah, that's my guy, without having some sort of evidence there.
Yeah.
So I feel like he's got to have some sort of inside information here. He's got to know something that we don't, because just because he plays Maui doesn't fit him for this role. So I'm excited. I'm excited for The Smash Machine. That's honestly, I saw this casting and I'm really excited for that movie now. And so just The Rock, buy stock now because it's
buy stock.
It's going up.
Yeah, the Scorsese's a big fan of The Young Rock this fall on NBC. So it's just, man, this would be so awesome if he won an Oscar. It'd be so great.
My personal headcanon is that Scorsese just saw Jumanji the next level and was obsessed with The Rock. He's like, I gotta get this guy in a movie.
Yeah,
he's
been waiting. He's a big Black Adam fan. He's
exactly.
He's a Restore the Snyderverse guy. All right, this next piece of news gets me excited, but also could be complete BS. So apparently there was a showing over the last couple of days where James Cameron showed some people Avatar 3. allegedly, according to the people he showed it to and the people he was telling about it, they think it's the best one yet. Which I was an Avatar hater. I have now been reborn as a Na'vi. I'm ready for Avatar 3. But also could be just James Cameron tooting his own horn, thinking he's doing it. If he pulls this off, though, my God.
Jack, you're an Avatar fan?
I love them. I think they're great movies. I think they're culturally.
I don't think Danny.
It's just like it's like a cultural experience at this point. Like we all just buy into seeing the blue people run around, and I'm all here for it. Like I think they're visually stunning. I get it. I think I see some criticisms that it's a very generic storyline in the sense that it's literally just capitalism and basically just the colonization that took place in the United States.
What? The metaphor is heavy-handed?
Yeah, but again,
unobtainium, baby.
Again, the military.
Military this is anti-military. This movie.
Well, yeah, anti-military, but I'm just saying the military comes up again. But yeah, I think it's so visually stunning. I think these movies look so good that I think you can't help but be entertained, even if these movies aren't for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't go through Twitter again for another month seeing like 45,000 posts about how the water physics looks so good. Like the CGI water looks
but they did look so good. They did.
Yeah, but I was like, if no one cared about the movie, like if it was just, oh, we're seeing Avatar 3, we're releasing it, and I would go see the movie and I would enjoy it, I would like it. But my problem is there's so many people who are obsessed with the movie and they're talking, they act like it's the greatest thing to ever, be put on a screen. And I'm like, it's fine. But like Jack said, it's a pretty heavy-handed metaphor. The plots are pretty generic, and like I don't really think any of the acting performances blow me away. So I'm not like it's a very classic like run-of-the-mill 3.5-star movie to me that people act like is the next great piece to American cinema. So I just get like fed up with this like the media aspect of it. But the movie itself is fine. Like I liked Avatar 2. It was pretty good. And the first one, I watched it in a road trip on a car. I think I remember enjoying it.
Avatar 2, the third biggest movie of all time. James Cameron still has 3 of the top 4. That guy.
He's going to be the box office king.
I said it.
He's going to own the box office.
Who's seeing these movies? I guess it just appeals to everyone.
Yeah. I mean, it was packed when I went opening night, but most things are packed opening night when I go. Yeah, I love the idea that like middle America like loves Avatar.
It's the blue people.
Yeah. All right, this last piece of news here. Big controversy online. People saying the death of the franchise. James Bond. The creative control of James Bond is now under the tutelage of Amazon MGM. The creative control is taken away from the producers who owned it forever, the Broccoli family. Which is just an awesome last name.
I was going to say that's a real name.
Yeah, and now James Bond is under the Amazon banner. People are saying this is the death of the franchise. I kind of disagree, but what are thoughts on this? Would you rather stick with the Broccolis?
I don't. Unfortunately, I don't know Amazon's management style all too well, and I mean, I'm familiar with The Boys. And I know that you guys are very familiar with Invincible. Sounds like those are some pretty awesome projects. I really like the James Bond movies. I haven't seen a lot of the older ones, but the Daniel Craig ones are very iconic to me, very nostalgic movies. I watched with my dad. Personally, I like the ending to that franchise, and I think it's been very fun to everyone to speculate who the next Bond will be. But this overwhelming reaction I'm seeing online from people saying that like James Bond is over and that it's doomed, it kind of scares me. Because if everyone's saying this, my gut's telling me that it's not a good thing. Yet again, I haven't really looked into this myself. So like, obviously I probably need to take the time to do that, but I am a little scared because I do like this character and I think there's still a lot of great stories to be told, but I just hope Amazon, maybe they could do better than what people think. I mean, I'm not sure. Do you have any like initial thoughts on this?
I've never seen a James Bond movie in my life.
Wow.
Oh man.
It's
Whoa.
not something that I've seen 1,000 James Bond spoofs. I love Austin Powers. I love the TV show Archer, which is like 14 seasons of a James Bond spoof. But I've never actually sat and in entirety watched a James Bond movie. So I have no real opinions on the character. I think going to Amazon's probably not like. Obviously, I would prefer that a singular family, like the family that had control, keeps it rather than the largest corporations. That's just my general principles. But also, it's probably good now that there's no because Amazon, like MGM already had what is it? I think they already had like some of the rights to it. They didn't have like creative control, but they had the rights to the movies. But now they have both. So if you are a James Bond fan, as far as like freeing up the ability of them to make more Bond movies, there will be more Bond movies. Like it's more likely they make them and they will come out more often because of this. I don't know if that's going to increase the quality or decrease the quality, given that I've never seen them. I think it's time for the first female Bond, though. I want a British female Bond, and I want her to be named probably not James, but like I don't know what would her name be?
Julia Bond.
Yeah, Julie.
Jamie.
Is
Jamie Bond.
Jamie Bond. Oh, I like that.
Timothy
Jamie Bond. The name's Bond. Jamie Bond.
Jamie Bond.
Yeah, I want Jamie Bond, and that'll be the first Bond movie I watch, and then I'll use that to determine whether or not I want to watch all the other ones. I do like Daniel Craig, though. Eventually, I'll get around to watching them. Gonna mention a third time, my roommate Joey thinks Casino Royale's the best movie of all time, so at some point, we'll watch it, but yeah, I have no real input on the actual movie quality itself.
Yeah, I was on a journey. I'm on a journey still this year to watch all of the Bonds. I'm almost through the Sean Connery Bonds, which are very much of their time, but also incredible in like their own way. I wish people dressed like that still. They look so good all the time. But I am a little nervous with the creative control aspect. Like if if they were like, hey, it's Apple owning it, I'd feel better about it. Just like I feel like Apple quality is much better. But then again, Amazon has all the money in the world. Like if they really wanted, they could get the best writers, the best directors, like and just do this right and make James Bond as big as it could be. I just don't know if they're going to do that. And I know I'll go back to Glazing, Christopher Nolan, but Christopher Nolan apparently has wanted to make a Bond movie for like a decade. So get someone like him or get like a big name and do something with it. Do like, I feel like it deserves something more. I also wouldn't mind a period piece, like take Bond and put him back in the 60s or 70s. And like, it doesn't have to be today. And then, I do want a young Bond though. I like Daniel Craig a lot, but the last few movies he was old. I want like a young, quick Bond. I don't know. I like Bond. I always felt like he like couldn't keep up in a fight. Like I always felt like he was the gentleman, but not like that's what's great about going back to the old ones from the 60s is they just cannot fight. Like they'll like they do the judo chop from Austin Powers. Like he literally does the judo chop and like repeatedly, and that's like their fighting ability. I don't know. I want like a badass Bond, and I hope we get it. So I don't know.
Marshawn Lynch has gotten into acting recently. I would.
Yeah,
You want a quick Bond? That guy ran for about 10,000 yards.
Hey, maybe if The Rock wins his Oscar, Dwayne Johnson as James Bond. But yeah, that's it for news. We'll get into our singular trailer we have. Freaky Tales. So, reading a little synopsis here. 4 interconnected stories set in 1987 Oakland, California will tell about the love of music, movies, people, and places, and memories beyond our knowable universe. Starring Pedro Pascal, Tom Hanks, apparently, which I didn't remember from the trailer, Ben Mendelsohn, and the late Angus Cloud, along with Jay Ellis and some other folks. Do we like this trailer?
I thought it was intriguing. I think Pedro Pascal is a name now that kind of gets me to hop out of my seat, makes me interested. I like him. He's a nice guy. But like, I don't know, this movie, it had a very specific vibe, and it really wants you to feel like retro. you know, and they, along with the font as well as like the
Yeah,
color grading, it looks like for this movie, they're just trying to make it feel very retro. It's very much giving me like Y2K vibes,
I would agree.
which I didn't see, which I wish I could speak more on that behalf. But I think Pedro Pascal might be enough to get me to watch this movie. I don't know. What did you guys think?
It's got good ratings on Letterboxd. I know not a lot. It's only got like a couple of hundred reviews because not a ton of people have seen it yet. But I mean, 3.6 stars is enough to get me interested. It's got a lot of 5-star ratings. And I don't know. I haven't seen the movie yet, obviously, but based on Hunter's reading, it sounds kind of like it's one of those Tarantino-esque like anthologies where you got a bunch of different stories that kind of overlap, which I'm always a fan of. I like it. Kind of sounds like Pulp Fiction-y in that way. And obviously, like me personally, I love like old school LA movies. Like I love when movies are set in LA, especially this one is like 1987. So I mean, from a standpoint of like the setting, it's intriguing to me. So I'll definitely watch it. I don't really know if it's gonna be good or not. But.
Yeah, I'm in between here. It is from the writer and director of Captain Marvel, so you know that could be something. I'm sure that someone got excited when I said that, but I don't know. I'm like in on it, but I don't know if it screams 3 out of 5. Like it just screams 3 out of 5. And whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, I don't know. But we'll have to, I guess, wait and see. It is weird they've sat on it for like over a year. Like it came out, I think, late 2023, and we're not going to get it until April of this year. So I wonder why that is.
It's gonna have to fight for box office space with The Accountant too.
Oh, then not even close. There's no shot.
Better- Gotta be
There's
careful
no
there.
shot. Yeah, seriously. But that's it for trailers. So since Danny did not watch it, we'll start with Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, and then we'll get into Invincible and Severance. So Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man wrapped season 1, finished up with a 2-episode finale, and honestly ended on a high note. We'll do no spoilers because I don't think you really have to spoil anything going into it for the last little bit, and we'll just talk about the season as a whole. But it's incredible how much this made the MCU origin actively worse week to week.
Yeah.
Like it just did. Like it's just like it handled it so much better than the movies did, which stinks for the movies, but I still like those. But yeah, this is a great show.
I think it's just the way they're able to mingle in these characters, whether like small or massive, like Spider-Man villains, and how they make us actively care for these individuals, which obviously in a TV show, you have more time, you have more resources to like, you know, push those narratives with each of these characters. You don't really have the time to do that in a movie, which I understand. But like, I like these characters. Like I care for them, you know, like Peter, he's got a lot going on, you know, but then like even Tombstone?
Yeah, the origin of Tombstone.
Great. There's just they kind of just sprinkle in characters we know, and it's fun. It's intriguing, and the problem with the MCU is they're just, hey, look, this is someone you know. All right, see ya. But it's like they focus too much on that's like a massive point of their story, as opposed to in here they sprinkle it in, but they continue on with what they're doing. It doesn't distract them from making like a good story with good character development. And I feel like they really did that with the show. And I was originally like, I'm not a hater, but I was like, after the first,
I thought this was gonna be bad. I did think this would be bad.
I was like, after the first 2 episodes, I was like, I don't think I'm really in on this anymore. But then kind of gave it another shot with episode 3, and I was like, all right, this is good. Like, I mean, Coleman Domingo as Norman Osborn, elite. It's gonna be live action after he wins that Oscar. It's gonna be crazy. It's gonna be electric.
It's gonna be fantastic.
It's gonna be amazing.
Spectacular. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's really all I got to say for it. It's just such a massive surprise, and it's so fun to have something like that kind of week to week that you can hop into for 20 minutes. Like
Agreed.
I'm like, you know, I got an hour. I mean, I could watch a TV show or something, so I just watched a couple episodes, and I'm like, you know what? I'm satisfied. Those were fun. watch it while I'm like cooking dinner or something. And I'm like, that was great.
Yeah, no, I'm 100% with you. I think to your point about like the sprinkling in other characters, it never felt like we never felt like we paused the story to like look and clap.
Yeah,
Where
exactly.
I felt like a lot of times in like the Spider-Man movies in the MCU, we had to do that with like Iron Man, where it was like, oh, look at he's actually there, not in the suit. Like there are those moments, and then it is incredible. Like I think of the last decade and a half, like the biggest complaints from Spider-Man fans from the live action, which is like in the Amazing. So slight spoilers ahead for like the next 30 seconds, but it's very mild. Like the main MCU stuff was Iron Boy Jr. In the Amazing Spider-Man movies, it was that the too much involvement from Richard Parker, and like then you also have the complaints that there's not enough rogues that are actually Spider-Man villains. And this show does all of those same issues, but it just does it well, and it's like it's so interesting to see the difference. Like it does the Spider-Boy Jr., but since it's Norman Osborn, like you feel like it's actually more involved in the story than Iron Man. It does Richard Parker again, and like you're actually kind of intrigued what's going to happen. And like the rogues are actually Spider-Man villains, which like what a concept. And they're not someone else's. But like the Doc Ock here is actually going to be this Peter's Doc Ock instead of borrowing one. Which as much as I love the Tom like that third movie,
Alfred Molina.
Yeah, like it's just now that character is kind of ruined. Like he can't have his own unless he'll know who he is, and it just kind of just changes it. So, this show is a big surprise, and I'm very excited for season 2. Is kind of the summary of it all.
I hope it comes out soon, which it's probably not.
I think next year. I think.
Okay.
I know Daredevil is back-to-back years, which Daredevil starts in a couple weeks, and let's just say, I will be my whole personality around Daredevil. But yes. Anything else for Spider-Man? For getting this Invincible?
That's it.
Cool. All right. Invincible most recently was episode 5. Slight filler episode, but Mark and Eve start a business to encounter a familiar face, and Debbie worries that Oliver is growing up too quickly. So, Danny, you can give your thoughts on like the season as a whole so far, and we can just kind of go from there. We don't have to talk about the episode specifically.
Yeah, this show is so damn good. I do think that this episode specifically, yes, was a little bit of filler, but it doesn't matter because even the filler episodes are so intriguing. Like every single scene, I'm like completely locked in. There's like I've watched shows with other filler before. I've watched like One Piece has a ton of filler in it, and I just like can't get through it because I'm like, this is ridiculous, not moving the plot forward in any way. But Invincible, like even when there's not a ton of stuff happening with the main storyline, there's so much that's intriguing. Like everything that occurs in this show is done perfectly. The animation looks so great, like so much better than season 1. The voice acting is spectacular, and I mean it makes sense because the cast is unbelievable. But I like it every time the episode comes out. Thursdays are literally like. I'm a big football fan, so I'm not gonna say it's my Super Bowl, but Thursdays are basically like the best day of the week for the foreseeable future when I'm getting the back-to-back of Invincible and Severance. So good.
So good. And I'm with you on that too, like the filler of it all. And I think what's important too is like this show's filler episode progresses character development. Where like a lot of shows will just do like a whatever throwaway episode, but like this does push characters forward. Like the synopsis says, Oliver becomes more of a fleshed out character, and we get to see Mark and Eve kind of handle that situation. And yeah, Mark and Eve kind of go back from like, oh, we're going to move in together to we're just still dating again. So that kind of whole plot thread went away, but like it actually made sense for where it went for them. And it was like a good moment for them to develop as characters. And even Debbie got some good development.
Yeah. And
I
was just saying, I like the talking about the Oliver development, like that's technically like a filler scene or whatever. Like it doesn't have any impact on the main storyline. But the scene where he's skateboarding, I was on edge, like worried what was going to happen to those kids who were bullying him. And, everything worked out. But like the fact that a scene like that's so like completely it's not relevant at all to the main storyline, but obviously it's character development. And I'm like locked in and so intrigued by it, and it's making me feel that way. Just shows how good the show is and how important all the characters are, and even Oliver, who's the newest addition to like the main cast or whatever. I like the fact that I care so much about it just shows like they're doing all the right stuff. It is unbelievable. If you haven't seen it, please go watch it because I guarantee you, if you watch the entire first episode, you will be hooked.
Yeah, for sure. 1,000,000%.
Hard to talk about without spoiling it.
I watched the first episode and I'm interested, but I have not been able to watch the show. And I've just heard great things about it. And you continue to kind of echo.
Well, you have
everything
like
talked
2
about
years
in
between
Seth as well.
seasons. Like you have 2 years between seasons, so like you can catch up anytime.
Start making them yearly now, actually. Amazon,
Allegedly, yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, allegedly. They say that all the time, like, oh, we're gonna start making stuff quicker. But they said now that they have like all of the, they know basically that they're gonna keep renewing the show for as long as they want because it's doing so well. There's no like question of renewal, and assuming there's no more writer's strikes or anything like that. Then theoretically speaking, I think that they have the capabilities, especially with Amazon, to get it going and making new episodes. Like I didn't even know that the new season came out. There was 3 or 4 episodes in before I like saw something on Twitter about it, or 3 episodes in, I saw something on Twitter like about Oliver, and I was like, wait a minute, like the new season's out, and I don't know if they just didn't do a good job promoting it or what, but I was surprised how fast they got the new season out, and if they keep making them every year, I mean, I'm here for it.
Yeah, 100%. All right. Last but certainly not least, actually maybe top of the list, Severance. Oh, he's got the merch on. He's got some Severance merch on. That's actually incredible. So, last episode was Attila. Synopsis, which is very short as always. Bonds are tested. Mark continues on his path of discovery. A better synopsis that I can give is basically Mr. Milchick had a day off, and all the kids went a little crazy, and and Mark is really going through it in and out. So we can go. This show is we're going full spoilers. Full spoilers. Sorry if you haven't seen. If you're not watching Severance, I don't know what you're doing. But yeah,
I feel like everyone's watching this show.
as they should.
Like it's so funny because like almost everyone I know is watching this show, and it's so fun to just kind of live out this experience where everyone, like kind of what you were alluding to earlier, Danny, just saying like Thursdays, like that is something I look forward to, and I'm so excited every Thursday because I know that I'm gonna have a new episode, Severance coming out. Me and my roommate, we watch it together. His girlfriend and her roommates watch it together. Our friends are. I mean, we just need to do a massive watch party. But it's just so cool to kind of like witness television at this level, like with other people. I don't know. It sounds weird, but I just feel like it's so cool that it kind of connects everyone, almost everyone I know, even though our interests could be like so different.
It used to be a thing though, where like when cable TV was actually like relevant, where certain shows like I don't know if you guys have ever seen Lost.
Yeah,
awesome show by the way. Just plugging it right now. Joey, I got Joey to start rewatching it, so I've been rewatching with him, and I've been like reading the Reddit anytime we like go through stuff just to like catch back up. And apparently, it used to be like a thing where when it came out, like every single person watched it. So there used to be more of like a thing where when big TV shows would come out, everyone, no matter who you were, was tuning in and talking about it the next day. But I feel like with everything going to streaming now, you don't really have as much as that because you don't really have like the weekly releases all the time. Not everyone has every streaming service, so you get more segmented populations of who's watching the shows. But I mean, Severance is so damn good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm with you. I think one of my favorite pictures of all time is people watching the Seinfeld finale in Times Square.
Yeah,
and like you just don't have a lot of TV moments like that anymore because everyone's so just divided. Like really, only like a few HBO Sunday night shows and Severance are like the 2 examples of what we still have left. And Severance is like, it's just so incredibly well done. And like specifically with this episode, this was a big Helly episode on the inside with her innie, and like on the outside with it's like technically what Helena is on the outside and Helly's on the inside. Helly,
Yeah,
like
Helena, yeah,
Helly got her own experience is the best way possible to say that. And then Helena on the outside is just a little stalker, creepy lady who really misses Mark. And she's been so specific, like with her moves. Every time we see Helena on the outside, like she's very like everything is so meticulous that I wonder why it just felt like a very big waste to kind of give herself up to Mark and like show who she is to Mark on the outside. And I feel like it has to be smarter than it was. And so I really wonder what kind of the play is there for her. Besides maybe just being attracted to Mark, which she clearly is, but she's more so attracted to his Innie than I would say his Audi.
I even think it's like the freedom of it all, you know, and how she kinda has this massive company kind of like lined up for her. She is the heir to this throne, and she feels like, you know, she doesn't really have much of a say in what she's doing. And as she, you know, many episodes ago, she sees that kiss between her and Mark, and she's like, my Innie is having more fun than I am. And I think this episode just kind of progresses that storyline a little bit, just to where, like, when I saw that she was walking into the restaurant, like my jaw dropped, because like we haven't gotten any of that. Like the fact that like all of these coworkers, they all work together, but like they don't run into each other. I mean, they live in the same town. Like that's reasonable, right? Like that they would just go to the grocery store, and it's like, oh my gosh, there's Dylan. Like we don't need to make it a whole big deal if they talk or anything. But it's like, oh, there's Dylan. But like obviously this was planned. But my goodness, my face, just like my expression, everything. I was like, is she actually doing this right now?
Yeah.
I'm thinking she's gonna try and do it again, right? I mean, this isn't just a one and done thing, right?
I agree. My take on it was, so she goes, first off, I think Helena Egan is basically like whatever the term for female incel is. I think that's what she is. Like she is just she's just like a lonely and probably hates her life. And
like her Innie has more freedom.
Exactly. She's required to, you know, basically follow all of the you know, virtues of the Egans or whatever. And then she goes into the workplace as pretending to be Helly, and she has this experience where this is probably her first time. She said, I've never brought anyone home to my parents before. It's probably her first time like really experiencing like human connection and emotion like that. And then she and Mark do a little orpo, you know, treatment or whatever. And now she's like craving that experience again, because you see when they talk about it later in the conference room with the Egans, they're like, oh, like Helly's volunteers. She's like, oh, I'll go back in. They won't know. She just wants to go back in for Mark. She wants to get the connection again. So now they're like, no, you're not going back in. We're sending your Innie back in. We can't risk that again. So she's craving that human connection. So what is her only option to get that again? It's to stalk Mark and be like, oh, like, I can't believe you're here. With the face she made when she sees him at the restaurant, where she's like, that actually, I was cracking up, because that's like, oh my God, like what a loser. Like it's so crazy to me. And the show is done so well. Like she is so desperate for the connection, and I'm very intrigued to see what happens, because I was thinking of it like Mark's getting reintegrated, right? So he basically, from his perspective, what he knows is, okay, my dead wife might not be dead, and this company has her potentially, and I think she maybe works there. I don't know. Then he's getting reintegrated, right? And he meets the CEO of this company that he thinks like maybe killed his wife, maybe like abducted her. He doesn't know. And the first memory he has when he gets reintegrated is being on top of the CEO's daughter of that company. Like, oh, imagine how like mind breaking that is.
It's insane. Like the fact that I've been saying this all along. There's this relationship. I'm very interested to see his Innie and his Audi. They both have these very strong feelings towards these women. When he fully reintegrates, how are those feelings going to balance? You know, like, is his Audi going to have full control over how he feels, or is his Innie? I mean, obviously, you would assume his Audi has more control, considering that his Audi has lived the longer portion of his life. But I'm very interested as well, just to see how those kind of like balance. But I just got to say that restaurant sequence, it's like the craziest role play I've ever seen. Like I don't know what they were doing, but that's just
like, kudos to the actors, because like you genuinely think they're two different characters. Like what Britt Lower is doing, being
so
Helly
good.
and Helena. Oh, like if she doesn't win an Emmy, I'm done. Because that's I mean, like, that is one of, if not the best performances I've ever seen on a TV show. And Adam Scott's great too. Like everyone's great, but oh my god, Britt Lower is like my jaw is dropped every single time I see her do like the switch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the other big thing from this episode was the dinner of Irving and Bert and Cecil, or I guess Fields. I think that it's designed where you are supposed to not like Fields in that moment, but you understand where he's coming from. Like it's just so unbelievably like uncomfortable, especially with his belief system. He says like where the innies are people, like they're their own person. And so his whole plan was like, well, if the innie gets, to go to heaven, then I'll be with you again. But the innie loves
You
someone
believe
else.
that?
That's
You
crazy.
believe that that's a true story?
I believe that they believe it. Yeah. Because I believe Fields. I don't know if I believe that Bert believes it or he was just doing it to appease Fields, but I did believe that Fields believed it.
So what is your take on the fact like the whole he's been working there for 20 years when they've only had offices for 12?
That one I was unsure. My thought is either A, there is there was the ability to severing, or like there was thoughts on severance before maybe the mainstream knew about it, and there were people who like started it, which could have been Bert, which is why he was kind of in like a nicer position in comparison to like data management, or Bert possibly lied for a long time about what he was doing, and then finally, joined in with like severing.
What do you think, Jack?
I think like the whole dinner was just a distraction to get him out of the house.
So I can't remember the dude's name. Couldn't go through his apartment.
Yeah, like the bigger, like the dude with the beard and everything. Yeah.
I think Bert's a little sneaky. I don't trust him anymore because I'm thinking that Fields slipped up and was not supposed to say that he's been there 20 years. And I think that he's probably like his Audi at least has some kind of deal with Lumen or some kind of like, I don't know if it's like spy is the right word, but I think he's still like employed by Lumen. And I will say this, and I credit to whoever I read this tweet from because I didn't notice it when I watched the episode. But when I can't remember the big guy with the beard goes into Irving's house, Irving has taken down all of the paintings of the exports hallway.
Yeah.
And his dog is not there. So people are saying that Irving knew, or he at least anticipated that him leaving the house might be an opportunity for Lumen to go and investigate. So he hid all of the stuff that would indicate that he might have more information than he should have about everything that's going on at Lumen. And if that's the case, I mean, who other than Irving on the show has been as good at clocking Lumen like on their bullshit? Like,
Yeah.
Yeah. You know what could be is, I guess I never thought about this right now. They talk about like their pastor saying, like teaching them about the innies and like their belief system. I don't know if they specifically said it in the episode, or at least it could be like a version of it. Clearly there's like almost a religion surrounding Lumen in and of itself. Like they could be followers of that, or at least a sect of whatever they said there are that are, they follow that. And so it could, I mean, obviously if the pastor's bringing it up and it's like recommending people get severed, I would probably say that
Crazy.
at least there's some kind of influence from Lumen there, which is for sure having some kind of, so that could be part of it as well. Especially because it seemed like going to church was not Bert's idea initially. It kind of came from Fields, where then Bert found himself again, which is interesting.
And I need an episode at that church.
Yeah, I got to figure out.
The craziest sermon I've ever heard in my entire life surrounding severance. And because when they brought this up at the dinner table, saying that like the innie and the Audi, they are basically different people. I'm like, I never thought of it like that. I'm like, I think it's very interesting to see severance from different viewpoints, kind of like how we saw in the first season, how we had that lady at the birth, like the camp, how she was, technically she probably was severed when she gave birth. I think it's just very interesting, and I think they can take so many different routes on this procedure, and I'd really like to see them do more of those things.
For sure. But yeah, great episode. Next week, should probably be amazing again. I think next week's called. It says next week's synopsis is an old romance intersects with a deadly present threat. So big episode next week. Can't wait. But let's get into the review. So 2003's Memories of Murder. I'll read the synopsis real quick, and then, well, I guess why we're doing this. Danny is our guest, obviously. So this is his number one Letterboxd movie, and your favorite movie ever. Yes, favorite movie ever. So we obviously, with him joining the pod this week, we decided to watch it, and with Bong Joon-ho's upcoming Mickey 17, it seemed like the perfect time. But yeah, I'll read the synopsis, and then I will tell the funny Charles story, and we can give our thoughts on Memories of Murder. In a small Korean province in 1986, two detectives struggle with the case of multiple young women being found raped and murdered by an unknown culprit. Before we jump into it, the funny Charles story is he basically does not have internet this last week. He's struggled with, I guess their Wi-Fi is down or whatever. So he texted us. Just accidentally downloaded Memoir of a Murderer instead of Memories of a Murderer. It's another Korean film, and he wouldn't even work for him. I guess it was buffering the whole time he was trying to watch it. So Charles is struggling. Hopefully he's better next week, but insane that he picked the wrong Korean murder movie. That's very similar, but it is what it is.
It's genuinely so funny because when I was scrolling through Letterboxd reviews, someone was like, accidentally watched Memoirs of Murder or something like that, and it looked like a very popular review. So I'd like to know what amount of people are watching Memoir of Murder or trying to watch Memories of Murder. Like, I just want to know how many people are renting this movie per year trying to watch something else.
The number 2 review on Letterboxd for Memoir of Murder is, I wanted to watch Memories of Murder directed by Bong Joon-ho.
So yeah, Charles is not alone, unfortunately. But yeah, I think we should do full. It's from 2003. It's from 22 years ago, and then we can do full spoilers. And I think it's easier to talk about full spoilers. But Danny, you are our guest. This is your favorite film ever. Why don't you knock us out? Go first.
Yeah. So I'll start with this. This is the top Letterboxd review of this movie, and I think that all of the movies I've ever seen, all the reviews I've ever read on Letterboxd, this is my favorite review of all time. It's not me. It's from Yi Jian. So shout out Yi. And I'll just read this, and I think then I'll kind of go into my thoughts. In America, they catch criminals by using their brains. Here, we rely on our feet, except we're always drop-kicking the wrong suspects. In America, they search for evidence. We have no need for that here. I can know who's guilty by simply staring into their eyes, except my own eyes have betrayed me time and time again, especially at the most crucial moment. It's so hard to tell. Documents do not lie, except when the information is not the answer we want, and then it cannot be trusted. If I kick them hard enough, maybe they'll tell the truth, except when my own leg is taken from me. The hands, the answers lie on their hands, except, well, in the end, they all look the same. 3 women dead, someone must have done it. A killer hiding out there, plain-looking killer with soft, feminine hands. This man exists, yet impossible to be found. It's the rain's fault. No, it's the radio station's fault. No, it's the kid's fault. It's the forensics team. It's your incompetence, it's his temper, it's everyone else's but mine, because I will solve this. Even if I have to run everywhere, I will solve this. I will take off the pants of every monk, hang every convicted sex offender upside down to get the confession. I will chase as far as these legs can carry me, except when they can't anymore. And so that's the end of the review. I think that is, I know it kind of, if you haven't seen the movie, it doesn't make sense, but I think it is such an amazing movie. It does an amazing job, first off, of just the juxtaposition between Korean versus American. I know it's based from 1980s, so there's a lot more difference in how the detectives work versus from Korea to America. And a lot of the movies, the juxtaposition of what they do in America versus what they do in Korea. And it's, in a lot of ways, it is like a character-based movie. Like, you're looking at these two detectives, one who's studied in a big city, who has this more American style of being a detective, and one who's got this Korean style where he doesn't need all of these newfound, like, data things. He doesn't need science to solve his crimes. He knows he's got this internal ability to be a detective, and the way they juxtapose him with the big city guy who's got more like new like American style ways of being a detective is so funny because like he's so incompetent, the main character, yet you're always rooting for him the entire movie, and the fact that it's based on a true story too just blows my mind. I can't say enough about this movie where every point, every turn that happens, you think something's going to occur, and then you're just completely blindsided by the next thing. I don't. I know you said no spoilers, but I don't.
No, full
I almost
spoilers. Full.
No, sorry.
Spoil
I know
away.
I know you said full spoilers. I almost don't want to because I feel like it's a disservice to anyone who hasn't seen this movie. But I'll leave it at this. There is no movie that I've watched where I've been so impressed by all of the aspects of a movie. I'll start with the performances. The performances, every single character, every single actor acts like unbelievable. I like genuinely think I'm there watching these events unfold. Every line is delivered with the most true passion and belief, and it's hysterical. Yet still, it does not take away from the gravity of the movie. I truly feel like, oh my God, they need to solve these crimes right now, or else someone else is going to get murdered. Like it feels like it's occurring while I'm there. The directing, I mean, Bong Joon-ho is my favorite director of all time. What he does from just a color perspective, from a camera angle perspective, the types of shots he's using, like blown away. He's so talented. And like obviously, I think that most people have probably seen Parasite of all of his movies, and probably maybe Snowpiercer because it's English. But I just think this is as good, if not better, than Parasite. I personally like it more. And as far as like crime, murder movies goes, those are kind of like the movies I like. So this just falls right in my alley, and they just execute at every single level, and they make such an amazing piece of film. So. I can't, it's like hard to express into words how much I enjoy this movie. And I truly think that it needs to get more recognition because I think that a lot of foreign movies don't really get the recognition they deserve, like Parasite being the first foreign movie to win, Best Picture. 2019, that's too long, that they took too long to make that decision. But yeah, like blown away every single time I watch this. I know, Hunter, you just watched it for the first time, so I'd like to hear your thoughts on it.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Seven and like of Zodiac. So for me, like I was like, all right, this is the vibe I'm getting into right away. That was like right off the bat my interpretation of it. My real experience with Bong Joon-ho is Snowpiercer and Parasite, and this, besides the lead actor, is quite different from both of those. For me, I think that this worked on a lot of levels. The only one where I think I'm a little lower than you guys, and it might just be because it was the first watch, where it seems like from what you just said, like the more you watch it, the more you kind of fall in love with it, is I think that I wish that the detective who was from Seoul, like that detective, I wish he had more agency in like the beginning, because obviously he disagrees with how the rural detectives kind of handle the situation repeatedly, and the way that they do of like just torturing these people to just eventually just admit that they did these crimes and then calling it a day and taking a photo is like an incredible dissection of what policing was like back then. And clearly, like the Seoul detective is just so anti what they're doing, and like he's 10 steps ahead of where they are. But I just wish he had a little more agency until he kind of, because then he kind of does. He devolves, like they each learn from each other. Like he devolves into them a little bit, and then they kind of rise to the occasion of what it is towards the end. Specifically with like the evidence of it all, where, like you said, the paper is always right until it's the answer you don't want, and then it's wrong. And I think it's also an age thing where he's like a younger detective, and so he hasn't kind of seen it and gone through it enough where like his opinions haven't changed with it until he really had someone who's close to him, which is that little girl, where she finally was killed, and then he kind of changed a little bit there. I do think, though, from a story standpoint, this is extremely strong. I think from the visual standpoint, it is incredible to look at, especially some of the shots of them just standing in fields. And even from like a cultural standpoint, the one thing I found really interesting is, at least with the depiction that we get of a small Korean town versus like when we get these stories of like murders in small American towns, there's like the town itself becomes a character where like you have the people who are also in the town trying to figure out who's doing this. And like the town kind of rallies around the detective, or at least tries to help in some way, shape or form, where even though this was a small town in Korea, it almost just felt like life was just kind of carrying on. Like it was like, oh, the murders have, like, especially like the kids playing in the crime scenes. Like it's just such a different cultural aspect of it, which I just found really interesting. And I wonder how accurate that was to the time, especially because this is the first, like this is based on a true story. This is like the first series of like a serial killer in Korea, which is honestly good for them. Like waiting to the late 80s, like that's really impressive. It's like a culture. But I think for me, what really like stays with me is the last 15 minutes. I really loved like the idea of obsession and how it changes you over time. For like, even I'm trying to think, Detective Park, where like it fast forwards, 20 some odd years. And like, even then he's moved on, he has kids, like he's a different job. He's not even just the lingering question in the back of your mind stays with you. And we didn't really get to see what happened to the sole detective afterwards, but like, I'm sure that he changed forever because of this, and like his opinions changed forever. But then life kind of just carries on around them. Like those things that happen become stories, and it's just like people just keep going and moving forward. So overall, I really, really liked it. I think it's extremely well done. Needed 2 more drop kicks to be able to 5-star. But I'm very, very glad I watched it.
Jack,
Really
did you see
loved it.
this?
I did. Yeah, I just haven't logged it yet. I think I've been thinking about this movie like since I finished it, and as we've been talking about, I think there's just so much to think about here, and to try and sum that up in like a stupid little one-liner, or like even like a paragraph, just doesn't feel like I could talk about this movie enough. I mean, you guys kind of already said, but like visually, this is like just beautiful. I mean, there's several sequences in this movie where I just get like goosebumps. I mean, a couple in particular. There's the one where the woman's walking down the road, and in the fields you get a little glimpse of
when he rises.
The head pop up.
Yes,
oh my god,
so good.
Like it's insane because it's not enough to where, I mean, someone could clearly miss that, and that's what makes it so awesome, is that it's just enough to where you can notice it, but if you're really not paying attention that closely, you miss it. And then the sequence with the music, I think it's funny. As you said, Danny, there's so many hilarious parts in this movie.
Yeah.
But it doesn't take away from how serious this movie is. And there's so many movies that just get that so wrong, where it's such a serious topic and such a serious story, but they try and throw in humor in there and it just doesn't land at all. I mean, in particular, like the monk part where he's like, he goes to the sauna and he's just like laying in the water and he's like casually just like looking,
staring at everybody.
He's like staring at everyone as they're walking. It's hilarious. There's a couple other parts I wanted to like write down because I was like, I found myself laughing and I'm like, am I supposed to be laughing during this movie? I think the detective from Soul, I loved his progression. I think it's a very like Bicycle Thieves-esque like progression where like he starts off one way and by the end he's like not a completely different person, but he has definitely changed. And I think this is a great story too, because it just, I feel like it says not just a lot about police in general, and it talks about like the brutality that took place during this time and probably still does take place like everywhere. But it just says a lot about, like, as you were saying, Hunter, like obsession. Mm-hmm. Sometimes we can want something so bad and we feel like we're so right that we push ourselves to say like, I'm right. I can't possibly be wrong. Like this has to be the answer. Like, why can't I do this, and I think it has to do with control. Like, we can't control everything, and we want, to have this feeling that we've achieved something, or that, things are going our way. And when things get out of our control, we try and, hone that in a little bit more. Man, but this was so good. I originally, Parasite was like my favorite Bong Joon-ho movie. Or maybe, I don't know. I found myself more entertained by Snowpiercer, and that's just kind of like I don't know. Maybe that's like I don't think that's a hot take. I feel like it was just but Parasite's still very good. But like now, like Memories of Murder is like up there for me. Like this is like Bong Joon-ho's best movie in my opinion. The scene in particular where the song comes on and the detective sticks his hand out the window and you get the rain on it. Like that was another one where I'm just like chills. Mm-hmm. And it was really cool. Like I said earlier, Bong Joon-ho just finds ways, like very classic, like crime story can be told. Anyone can direct a movie like this, but it's just very well done and everything is set in place for a reason. And it's not, and even the ending is just phenomenal. It's one of the best endings of all time. Just like, I know I won't spoil it again just because I guess that's Danny's wish, but like it's just the ending of this movie is that good. It kind of just like had me sitting there for a second and I was just like, all right, well now I just kind of have to like go on and it's very fitting for this story, like it's.
Yeah. I think the one thing it does so well too is like the Detective Park, like in most movies would be like the bad guy. Like he's like a cop who's like planting evidence and trying to get like torturing people and, making them confess to things they didn't do. But here, like somehow Bong Joon-ho makes him likable and makes him like a redeeming character. And I think that's just so inherently impressive. And I think it's just the way he handles them and like handles the situation with all of them. And the scene that I think is my favorite, I don't know. I think it might be the scene where the sole detective goes to the back house behind the school and like here's the story of the woman who escaped. Mm-hmm. And then it kind of cuts back and forth of him standing alone in the field, just like smoking. And it's like just the separate, like he changes in that moment of like, he changes his whole opinion. And I feel like that's when he kind of becomes more jaded as a character. And I just think it's such a great moment. That's so well done, especially with like, they did like the testing, which historically, I don't know what that was. Like they did like the air raid tests and like everything would shut down and she was just so helpless during that moment.
I think it has to go like North Korea. I think
it was just it was such a good moment. But this, like the closest thing that we have in America is Zodiac, which also a story of obsession about a serial killer that we didn't know who it was at the time. Like,
I mean,
Memories of Murder.
So
I think
this movie, when I first finished it, like the first time I watched it, I finished it like 2:30 a.m. and I sat in my family room till like 4:30, like 2 hours on my phone, like reading about the movie, reading about the actual serial killer, the crimes and stuff. Like I was obsessed. The movie about obsession made me obsessed about finding out more about this movie and more about the murders that occurred. It was so intriguing to me. Which, I mean, if a movie can get you to think about it for like 2 straight hours right after it ends, that's a pretty damn good movie. And I know you guys were talking about your favorite scenes. The scene in the train tunnel where he is the sole detective thinks he's found the culprit. He thinks he's caught him because he escaped and he got him. He's punching him. He's trying to get him to confess. And it's the moment, and then Song Kang-ho's character, Detective Park, comes in with the test results saying that it's not a match, and that the guy that they thought this whole time that they nailed, they got him, is not it. And you see the switch where it's now the sole detective who is trying to beat the answer out of the innocent person, and it is our former abusive torturing cop who is saying we can't do this. The test results that show he's innocent. That switch right there, I'm like, oh my god, this movie. That to me at that moment, I was like, this is the best movie I've ever watched because wow, like it just chef's kiss as far as like the ability for character development to have them start, A and B and completely switch. And I'm like, and you don't even like realize it's happening while you're watching the movie until it happens, and then you see that and you're like, oh my god, like I just watched these two characters completely do a 180 right in front of my eyes, and I like wasn't even thinking about it because I was so engrossed with the story of catching the murderer. And like I like Jack said, I don't think that there's any amount of words I could use to describe how much I enjoy this movie. So and I'll also shout this out. If you like this movie and you haven't seen Mother, which is I think Bong Joon-ho's first like feature-length film. I believe it came out before this movie. Mother came out in 2009, so actually it came out after this movie. Another movie about murders in Korea, don't know who it is, trying to solve it. A little bit different because in this case, it's a mother whose son is charged with the murder, and she has to prove that he's innocent. But one of my good friends who's very into movies as well, his name is Ben. Ben watches things on Letterboxd. I give him a shout out. This is his favorite Bong Joon-ho movie, his Mother. And if you like this movie, you will also love Mother. They are close to equally as good. I personally prefer, Memories of Murder, but he prefers Mother. So I definitely give that a watch if you liked Memories of Murder.
I think Parasite might still be my one. I think this took the 2 spot though, above Snowpiercer.
It's hard to pick.
Yeah, like I mean, I could wake up tomorrow and be like, no, it might be. It's just like they're
Those
just
are my
so
top 3.
good.
Mother's my 4. Host is 5, and then I don't know if either of you have seen Okja, but that's 6.
Mhm.
Very, very different, like from this. But I think I think that Memories of Murder and Mother are pretty similar. Parasite is a little bit like them, but different. Snowpiercer is a lot more like actiony. And then The Host is like a monster movie, and Okja is like an interesting story about environmentalism and nature and versus like capitalism, and it's partially in English, so it's a little bit more accessible. I think it's on Netflix, or it was on Netflix. I don't know if it still is. No, it still is on Netflix. Okay, good movie. So if you're interested in getting into more of Bong Joon-ho's filmography before Mickey 17 comes out, that's a good watch.
Hell yeah. But yeah, that is a very, very good movie. Very glad we watched it, Danny. Thank you for coming on the pod.
I just love when like
I love an excuse to watch something. Is kind of yeah.
And a lot of people haven't seen Memories of Murder for whatever reason. It's not really super accessible from a streaming standpoint. It's not in English. It came out in 2003. So when I tell people like, oh, that's my favorite, they ask me what's my favorite movie, I say it's Memories of Murder. 90% of people haven't seen it or even heard of it. So just telling you guys about the movie, having you watch it, and after I recommended it, and just hearing that you both loved it, just like puts a massive smile on my face because I'm like, I love showing people movies that I love and they also love it. Like that just makes me so happy. So I really appreciate you two for watching it, and I'm also very happy that you guys enjoyed it.
Yes, it was.
Thank you.
Yeah, very big.
I think it was very easy to like watch too as well. Just like
yeah,
I think we know your taste in movies, and I think I'd be a bit fearful if I didn't know your taste in movies and you recommended me something that, maybe wasn't as popular. Obviously, this is a very a massive movie among like the film community, but it's just so cool to hear people talk about the movies that they love, why they love them. Literally just like the first experience watching the movie, just like you're saying, like going on like Reddit, reading everything you could about this movie is just like so cool. And I think it's so fun to just kind of like share those experiences. So I think it's definitely, this will be the first of many of just kind of like, we try and do it every, like, I don't know, what have we started doing, Hunter? Like maybe like since we did the Christmas one, we've probably done 2 now, where like we kind of share a movie we like on the pod.
Yeah.
We'll try
I mean, especially when there's not like a big new release, just trying to go watch something different or like go deep dive into someone that's like a little like different or like weird, or check out a filmography that we're not used to. So this was one that I think was big. Also, sometimes it's hard because I think sometimes you share your favorite movie with somebody and it's like, are they gonna?
I was nervous.
Yeah.
You guys didn't like it. I don't know if I would have been able to participate in the podcast, but I saw you had 4.5 stars. So I was like, okay, I can't.
Yeah.
I guess I'll go
we're good.
on it.
But no, big time liked it all across the board. And I wonder if Charles liked Memories of a Murderer, but I guess we'll have to wait and find out.
He did. I just saw he logged No Country for Old Men like just now. So I guess
there we go.
Back.
Oh yeah, his review. Thank God for physical media. Wi-Fi was out, but that didn't stop us.
I was thinking about it.
Another plug.
Like he's gotten like a massive physical media collection. I don't know if you've listened at all, Danny, but like at least every week he's coming on. He's going to these like yard sales, or I'm not.
Yeah, there's like some flea markets he goes that are awesome.
Yeah. And he's like, guys, you wouldn't believe it. And he's like, I got 30 DVDs this week. And he's like, how much do you think I got them for? And it'll be like 60. He's like, dude, I got them for like $45. It's just like so funny to see him like so excited, like every single week. He just got more and more. So hopefully his Wi-Fi gets fixed soon though, because it would have been crazy. 4 people on the pod. It would have been a nice full house.
Yeah. Would have been. I'd have to recreate the box for us. So the magical triangle we got. But last thing before we wrap it up, what do we give it out of 100? I give it a 91 out of 100 for our graphic here.
I'm gonna go 97.
Oh, 97.
I mean, it being my favorite movie of all time.
I feel like you got to go hundo.
Yeah, if I could do 100, I'll do 100. Like that's.
Hey, you're allowed to do whatever
It's
you
my
want
1-1. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
my 1-1.
And well deserved.
Just one more.
This might be the highest movie we ever rated on the podcast, I will say. Like at an aggregate score. So that's big. Huge.
I love to hear it.
Yeah. Looking ahead, Oscars next week. Danny, have any hot takes on the Oscars?
Yeah, I know she's not a betting favorite, but I really do think that Mikey Madison is going to win. She was so spectacular in Anora, and I like The Substance, but I thought that Mikey Madison's performance was better than Demi Moore's. But I understand from like a politics standpoint that Demi Moore is probably going to win it because, you know, she's the resident, you know, she's been in the industry a while. She hasn't, you know, won anything in a while, and it was a great performance, and it was also a very very risque performance from her. So I think that also kind of elevates her. So I understand if she wins, I won't be upset, but I really do think that Mikey Madison deserves to win.
Yeah, I'd like to see
it's
her
not a bad
win, too.
take. It's between those two. Like that's it. Like I think I agree with you. I think it's gonna be Demi Moore. I prefer The Substance overall to Anora. But I do. It's hard between those two performances. Like they're both so good. And then like I think either way, like I'll be like pretty pleased with that. Unless someone.
What do you think's winning Best Picture?
I actually put some thought into this recently. I don't think it's gonna be Anora. I actually think it's gonna be Conclave. I do. I
hope they get it.
There's something about Conclave that I feel like is just like really ramping up this last couple weeks.
I've seen something on Twitter about it a lot. Yeah.
I mean, I'd be fine like Anora and Conclave. I think if it's like in the nicest way possible, just any like this is almost any category, and I feel bad saying this, but just like a complete unknown. We've talked about this already, but like there's this massive obsession.
It's the Ron Timothy movie.
Exactly. I just like honestly anything besides a complete unknown. I was not a massive fan of this movie.
The Dune 2 erasure from this Oscars has absolutely livid. I mean,
disgusting.
Oh my God, that movie was so good. How could you possibly ignore that?
I don't know.
I'm not like, I haven't seen Emilia Perez, but from what I've read, it's not really deserving of all of the nominations it's getting. And the fact that Dune 2 is like just getting completely neglected, I don't know. I mean, it's not like Denis Villeneuve needs more awards, but like he deserves them.
He deserves, yes.
Yeah. I mean, from a standpoint of this story at one point being deemed, you know, unadaptable to what we have now is considered to potentially be one of the greatest, if not the greatest trilogy of all time, if he's able to land Dune Messiah, which I'm fingers crossed. I really hope he does. And I hope they sell those popcorn buckets again because I didn't get one. But look,
what do you use a popcorn bucket for, Jack?
I need to store stuff in my room. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
I mean, I got stuff I got to store, you know.
Yeah.
But I feel like it's such a slap in the face and it's so frustrating. And I feel like I could rant about this every single time it comes up because it's that infuriating to me when a movie looks this good and it's not just like some cheap knockoff of this very tough story to adapt. So I hope one day he'll get his flowers. You know, we'll be like 50.
Hey, if
and
they
they'll
could
be
pull
like,
off Messiah, he deserves all of it.
Without
They've been-
spoiling anything, I will say that I think Messiah, while it might be the hardest to adapt, I do think that it works very well from like a hero's journey standpoint. Like I think that if they can, again, like without spoiling, I think if they can get certain things right, just from like how they look and how like they chooses to go with the story, because they did make changes, like from the ending of Dune, like the books, and what happens in Dune 2. There's like one or two pretty significant changes that affect the plot pretty drastically. But because there is a time jump going to this movie, I think that they can make it work. I do think that it fits very well into like what, probably 2.5. He might shoot for a 3-hour movie, honestly, but like for one movie, I do think that he can cover everything that happens in the book in a very concise but very interesting and exciting way. So I have high expectations from reading the book of like what he's capable of doing.
Oh man, it has. I mean, I'd said it a couple weeks ago on the pod. Like, it seems like every few, like, often there's like the trilogy that defines a decade and a half, like Star Wars, Lord of the Rings. If they could do Dune, like that's the one for this last 20 some odd year run here. So be pretty incredible.
If it's not going to be that, it could be Red 1, 2, and 3. So
Yeah, the story of Callum Drift and friends is going to be it's how you do it. But yeah, so next week, Oscars episode. We're doing our Oscars, so the Real Serious Award show will be next week as well. So get hyped for that, and we'll talk Invincible again. We'll talk Severance. We'll talk. Actually, we won't talk Spider-Man because it's over. And then we'll figure out if there's a review next week. It might just be an Oscar special next week, to be honest. But yeah, unless Jack, do you want to go see the what's the new one with the guy who was Shazam? He's like a dad. You see those trailers?
oh yeah, is Zachary Levi?
The Zachary Levi one that's out now.
Yeah, I might go see it.
Okay, if you do, we'll spend a whole 6 minutes talking about it. But yeah,
Yeah, just like how we
Alright.
spent good time talking about the monkey.
Yeah. Ew, no thanks. But yeah, that's it. Danny, thank you for coming on. Next week, hopefully Charles's Wi-Fi will be cured. Might be an award tied to Charles's Wi-Fi. It's a little tease for the people. But yeah, as always, enjoy. Have a great week. See ya.